Morning. There's a better turnout than I expected after TechFest. So, my name's Andrew Kosmodakis. I'm an infrastructure consultant for Intergym based out of Wellington. Also a Microsoft VTSP in the private cloud, and optimized desktop, which pretty much means that we're sales ponies. Is anybody familiar with Virtual Machine Manager in any way? So whether it be 2008, 2012, all right, cool. Anybody primarily using 2012 yet? A couple of hands, that's all right. You guys familiar with services within the private cloud? So you're understanding the basics of it? All right. You might want to shoot off now then. What I'm going to do is quickly touch on Microsoft private cloud concepts. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the overall story of the Microsoft private cloud, but it's broken down into two tenets. We've got configure and deploy, and we've got manage and operate. From configure and deploy, VMM primarily fits within here. What we've got with configure and deploy is your underlying infrastructure, your applications or services that are running, monitoring those resources and allowing pooled resources like your compute, your network, your storage to be available to your clouds. Now, when we talk about clouds in the Microsoft private cloud, we are talking about on-premise. The technologies are expanding, and shortly you'll be able to manage and monitor your clouds across private, hybrid, and public. So services overall I'll get into shortly, but in cloud computing, it's more than just big virtualization. A lot of companies and vendors and people, and a lot of my customers think, all right, you're talking to me about private cloud, yep, I've got virtualization, I'm done. Well, it's actually not about that. It's about using your resources more effectively, using your compute power. So you've got a bunch of hosts all over the place, but not all of them are overly utilized. It's about managing your storage, having multiple SANs, being able to access enough of that space to actually better capacitize your environment. Also about delegating your networks and control and everything over those clouds and those services within the clouds. So, and the Microsoft story takes it a little bit further than that. They do talk about services and applications being part of your cloud. So it's not just about the underlying host, it's not about just the compute. It's actually about everything over and above that, the applications, the user experience, scale out, scale down, monitoring. So VMM typically fits within the configure and deploy, but also does work within the manage and operate environment, especially in the 2012 environment, and especially even more so in the Service Pack 1. Which is coming soon. So I'll start off just by covering a bit about templates. So templates under VMM 2008, anybody running that still? Nobody? No, one, cool, couple. All right, so it was about hardware profiles, your guest OS profiles, and deploying templated virtual machines over and over again. And it did that pretty reliably and consistently. But that was it. You deployed your virtual machine, and it was a virtual machine. It was a standalone box. Nothing happened afterwards. You had to log onto the server. You got to run up your apps. You got to install your antivirus or any other things you want to install. The template itself, your originating template, and the service or the virtual machine you had deployed never maintained any form of relationship. So once you deployed a virtual template, that was it. The machine was standalone. Anything you need to change, if you change your template, it didn't actually change anything on that virtual machine. So you have to manually log on or run the management tools to actually go away and change any configuration, be it memory, be it services that you might be installing or features, sorry. Under 2012, templates are actually just a starting point. They're actually the reference point for all your virtual machines within services. You're specifying your connectivity, your storage, your environment that you're connecting to. Also taking it further past the rich GUI that was in 2008, which was really replacing your unattend.txt, and adding additional features, applications, roles, everything you need to, including load balancers and networks. Sorry, just screen flicked for some reason. Well, so with Virtual Machine Manager 2012, Microsoft introduced number of load balancers that are supported. Of course, the Microsoft load balancer by default, but you can also extend it out to the F5s, the Citrix NetScalers, and a number of other vendors are coming up shortly. When you're deploying services, which I'll touch on a bit more, network load balancers could be part of the entire solution. You want to be able to apply the configuration across them and actually do more with your virtual machines than just have them sitting on a network and then having to configure your network load balancers around it. With instances and services, we now can deploy applications. So there's a number of applications straight out of the box we can do, which is web deploy. Anybody use the web deploy kit for deploying websites and web configuration? No? Yeah. The rest of you, I think you should look into it. It's really good for repeating your deployments. It really simplifies them across multiple different environments and also delta changes across them. They also introduced Server App V. Anybody using desktop virtualization for applications at all? Okay, a few. So think about App V from the desktop perspective out of MDOP back in the server end. They split paths a while ago, and now it's actually virtualization of your applications in your data center. So if you've got a common application running, including things like SQL reporting, you could virtualize it, have it within a bubble, for argument's sake. I don't know if I'm allowed to use that term anymore, and deploy it across multiple servers. You need to upgrade it, just rip it out and replace it. And it is that simple. It's not an installed application. Also, they added support for DAC packs. So that's the SQL data packs, which is literally taking your database, packaging it up into a file. You can do this out of Visual Studio, same way you can with MS Deploy packages, and have your database ready for deployment against a pre-sysprepped instance of SQL. Has anybody tried sysprepping SQL? Cool. All right, so from 2008 R2 onwards, you can actually do a pre-sysprep version of SQL. So it's pre-installed, much the same way as sysprep for Windows operating systems. So what I'm going to do is start diving into the virtual machine management environment and all the different concepts that I've got there and building a service. So this is a bit of a long-winded way that I'm going to take you through it, but I'm going to show you building a library, building your application profiles, building your guest profiles, building hardware profiles. One of the things I don't cover because my host won't support it right now and in a demo environment it's a bit harder, is actually building host profiles. So being able to pixie boot a brand new host box that you've purchased and having it apply a pre-configured operating system, profiles, network configuration, and adding it to your private cloud on the fly. I think they called it 12 easy steps or something. So yeah, we'll all look for 3 easy steps, not 12. So to start off with deploying services and applications within your private cloud and within services in VMM 2012, you've got to start looking at custom resources. At the end of the day for us, they're applications. They can be scripts, they can be registry keys, PowerShell, they could be an MSI for argument's sakes. But the primary focus of VMM 2012 when it first came out was again around DAC packs, web deploy packs, and your Server App V packages. So you got your agent install, which has to be deployed. You've got your sequencing, so you can deploy the sequencer and actually have it as a template or a service within your environment to start capturing applications within your organization. With Service Pack 1's coming the ability to remote capture. So if you've got an existing application, you don't know how it's configured or people have tweaked it over time, you can actually point Server App V sequencing tools to the remote box and actually pull across and create an application for you. It works quite well so far. It does rely on a number of things being present on your machine. So if you're an older machine, you're constantly cleaning up and deleting some source files and stuff off it. It can cause you a few problems, but it's easily rectifiable. And of course, Server App V can deploy its packages. So when we look past the application framework that's supported out of the box being, like I've said, MS Deploy packages, Server App V, and DAC packs, we've got general command execution scripts. And machine's gone into la la land, Jesus. Sorry. Should have turned my screensaver off. I can start to control a lot of the behavior that happens with these custom scripts. I can sit there and go, all right, I need it to log. Well, I can actually log it. I need to change the exit code that comes out. I can actually apply a different exit code to it. I can pass parameters like you can in any other batch file. you've got multiple entry points. We can say, okay, while deploying this application within my cloud, I need a pre-install, I need a post-install script, and I need them to run in this order. Coming in Service Pack 1 is the ability to chain a number of scripts as you're going through, much like you can with an SCCM task sequence or an MDT task sequence, or whatever format you guys might be using. The application profiles, for example, we can actually say, all right, I need to upgrade the service. Run these uninstall scripts first, then apply these additional scripts to install, and then run these post scripts. So giving you a bit more flexibility than just being one install, I'm done. Now I've got to manually go onto the server, uninstall it, and then go from there again. When you look deeper into some of the application deployment processes within SCVMM, you start to see there's quite a bit of what we call conflict, and we argue about it in our team quite often, between things like task sequences out of MDT or SCCM, and also the way the SCVMM deploys hosts and virtual machines. There is quite a bit of an overlap. So some of the technologies do overlap, and they do use common technologies amongst themselves. But VMM is literally about the data center and about deploying, nothing more than that. And managing, I guess, in some respects, but SCCM is your end-to-end management tool for those servers being live. So what are those, going to quickly run over the VMM library. Is anybody familiar with SCCM distribution points? Okay. It's pretty similar to that. It's just a network share. It's got a bunch of packages in it. You assigned library environments to your private cloud environments. From there, they then look into that location and they grab the packages and the sources they need from there. So if I have a look here, I've just got a standard, very simple VMM library. This is what I need just to deploy my demo environment. And I've got some application frameworks. I'll dig into those shortly. We've got an expense manager application. We've got some ISOs. We've got some stored VMs, and we've got some VHDs. Replication between libraries is not built into the product. So if you need to replicate them across data centers or anything like that, you do have to use third-party tools or Microsoft Robocopy, I guess. The VMM library, each library environment is allocated to a cloud. You can't have a library environment monitored by two clouds. So if you have a development environment or a development cloud and a production cloud, they have to be separate. So you have to assign two separate libraries to them. If I have a look at the cloud that we've got deployed here within this environment here, it's just make sure I don't hit delete. I've allocated it some simple resources. So I've allocated it to the production hosts. I've got a management host that runs off here as well. What that means is any services that I deploy or virtual machines that I deploy can be deployed to those hosts that are underlying. They're predefined. All I see as a user or end user, depending if you're using self-service portals or as an administrator, is a cloud name. And I'm deploying within those clouds. Virtual Machine Manager will take care of what's the best one, what's the expected ratings, and assign me those based on the number of hosts that I have underneath. I've got resources like network allocation, logical networks assigned to it. I can have multiple networks depending if I have a production network and a management network within the cloud. I can assign network load balancers. In this case, I'm just using a standard Microsoft one. And then I can assign my library. So this library is used only by this cloud. If I switch back to here. So if you have a look within the repository, which is my library, I've just got a bunch of folders with a .cr extension. That just means it's a custom resource. Within the library itself, if I pick it's pretty standard stuff. It's an MSI, there's some install scripts, there's some exes, there's some tools that I need. VMM captures that library file, so the CR file, and pulls it across into its deployment mechanism. Within there, it runs the scripts and the tools that I need it to by defining them as I'm going through the application profiles. Those are then run. So this is just literally a package. I've taken a folder, dumped a whole bunch of resources in it, given its custom extension, and pulled them across, and they start to get deployed across the environment. And again, my VHDs are just floating, but they are true resources. They are identified as existing resources, so they are actually just left alone. I don't have to put them in a folder. They're within the structure of the directories, and they get pulled across via bits or any other protocol that you guys decide during your configuration to deploy within my environment. Once they're in the share, you can start to actually manipulate some of the information that's on there, so you can actually utilize it and give yourself a bit more meaningful information. Can you guys see that all right? Cool. So for example, I've got SQL 2012 just as an ISO. I've gone and given it a family name, so I can easily identify what it is when I need to. I can sort by family names, I can identify by them. I can then assign additional tags if I need to do custom resource calls later on with custom scripts. I've got some SQL scripts. I'm running a bunch of SQL scripts that I'll chain up later. I've got another CR file further down there called Expense Manager. That's just another folder within the folder that's got another bunch of scripts that I want to call. So I can call outside of the package, I can call within the package another package to run additional scripts. So I'll extract that for me and pull it across, and then I can use that. So I don't have to deploy, if there was a 1 gig folder, for example, it won't try and pull the entire 1 gig. It'll pull the specified resources that I need. And then, of course, I've got a server app V package, a SQL DAC pack, and a couple of web deploy packages. I can start to allocate those. I haven't given them any family name, but I can go through now and say, all right, I want to actually assign those to a type. And that metadata is updated instantly, stored in SQL, and it's available to me when I'm deploying, when I'm creating my profiles later on. The thing with the libraries is there's a polling interval. Things don't appear straight away. So what you have to do is you copy it into the share, and it's about a 5-minute wait time. Normally, if you hit F5 a few times, by default, if you're just going to leave it and not browse your libraries, it's a 1-hour poll time. So if you're going to access those resources within an hour, it's best you actually run up the console and actually hit the F5 yourself, and you can access them straight away. So that leads me on to application profiles. Application profiles are, well, everybody's familiar with hardware profiles and operating system profiles within VMM. So there I sit there and I go, okay, I want 2 CPUs, I want a gig of memory, I want this network. Operating system profiles, I say, okay, I want these product keys, this administration password, this server name, and I go from there. Application profiles is just an extension of that, where I'm going, all right, what am I deploying? Do I want to categorize it as a standard application across my environment? It could be your antivirus software. It could be a third-party tool that you need on all your machines, or a registry key that you're deploying to identify a certain type of server type. So by using application profiles, I'm grouping the custom resources that I want to deploy to different types of servers. So I'm creating them, whether it be a SQL profile, a web server profile, or even just a standard profile for my environment. I group the applications and the actions that I want taken, and then I can call on those later on while I'm building my templates. So what happens is we start to actually build it up. So we build the library repository first, we start building application profiles next. Those application profiles will then start getting related to operating system and virtual machine templates. So as I said, SQL is a big part of it, so therefore you've got a SQL profile. Using pre-sysprep versions of SQL, I then have a configuration item that I've got there. I run through the standard wizard of preparing SQL for sysprep. I sysprep my operating system and close it down. I take that image, or VHD, move it into my library, and it's available for deployment. What happens though when I want to deploy that VHD? I can't just necessarily go, all right, I've deployed SQL. No, because then I've still got to finish the configuration. By creating a SQL profile, I can sit there and go, all right, I want the security mode. I want the instance name. I want the instance ID. I want to create a different service account for that instance, SA account, sorry, for that instance. I want to then go, all right, how are the services going to run? Do they run on the system? Do I run them under a domain account? I can assign those within that profile and have them predefined as a template. That means as a SQL DBA, for example, I can go in and say, here's a template for SQL. I can create it for you. Now, you IT guys, go and deploy it. This is your template. This is how we're going to deploy it. Therefore, you don't have to sit down every time and go, how am I going to do this? Or what do we need to do for that? Oh, God, do they want it as an SA account or do they want this? You can pass that responsibility to your SQL team, have it defined as a profile, and just reuse it every time as you need to. All right, moving to profiles and templates. So what I'll walk through is creating a bunch of profiles, so application profiles, and also creating the templates that associate to them, the virtual machine templates. Now, hopefully I'm not telling you guys how to suck eggs too much here, but once you start looking at the building blocks and you get to the virtual machine template phase, a lot of you would have done that bar the application profile stuff. So we've done it for those who use VMware. Anybody here using VMware in the environment? Yep, standard call. Anybody using Zen Server? Oh, yeah, cool. So I guess the one thing that I'd have to point out is, it doesn't matter if you're using VMware. It doesn't matter if you're using Zen Server. We can actually assign application profiles and VM profiles to those technologies. Of course, there's a VHD, what was the format for VMware again, sorry? Thank you. We can assign the profile, we just capture that profile and assign it, and we can actually manipulate it with VMM. VMM can manage Zen Server and VMware up to 4.1 at the moment. Service Pack 1 is going to be supporting 5, vSphere, sorry. So we can start deploying to those types of hosts. It's not a matter of, okay, I've got a Hyper-V farm, and that's it. VMM manages my Hyper-V, and vSphere manages my VMware farm. You can actually use Virtual Machine Manager to manage across those, all those different types of technologies. It is only the 3 supported, Zen Server, VMware, and Hyper-V at the moment. So by creating the profiles and templates, we can then deploy to those different environments and manage them as a service within Virtual Machine Manager and within your private cloud. So if I start with my SQL instance, for example, I've got one here that I've just thrown together. So as I said, we've got a bunch of run as accounts. We've got the descriptive name. We've given a real valid name because that's what we're running. And we've given an instance name. From there, I can sit there and go, okay, cool, I need to add a different product key in for these deployments. And if you've got different editions of SQL that you're running and you need different product keys for those, because we all know enterprise is cheap. So by using standard edition, okay, I need to create a standard edition profile. I can actually copy this application, this SQL profile, and create a standard edition and a SQL enterprise edition and just change the product key. That way, the DBAs are happy that, hey, our standards have been followed, or our licensing has been followed, and they're not going to have to turn around and say to us, hey, by the way, you've deployed the wrong version, roll it back. With VMM, there are a number of run as accounts. As the VMM administrator, I create a number of run as accounts for different things. I've got a service account for running my virtual machine management environment. I've got another one for doing deployments within my virtual machine environment. And then I've got multiple different types of SQL profiles if I want them. You can add as many as you need to at any stage, depending on what type of deployment you need to do or what sort of permissions you want to assign for different types of services. Within government environments, for example, we are quite restricted on a number of areas when we come in with them. So we have run as accounts for Africa, depending on the environment, depending on the server type, depending on the users that might be accessing that server. So the run as accounts are there. I can't see what the passwords are. Whoever created them there has got them in there. Or as an administrator who's deploying, I just select the account. We know that we need orange SA run account. Cool, I'll select that one and we run with it. So again, as I was saying, because it's sys-prepped version of SQL, I have to pass it the media source for any changes that it needs to make or any completion, any stages of the process that it needs to complete for installing SQL and configuring SQL as a finalized product. I can then assign who do I want in there, how many people have installed SQL and then realize that nobody else can access it, apart from themselves, of course. Well, that's all right, well, yeah. Some of our juniors have fun with that one. Also, I can say if I want to use just TCP or name pipes. So you are literally building a profile of how SQL should look at the end of the day. And of course, how do I want SQL to run? Under what context do I want it running? I can pick system or local system, whatever I need to at this point. Okay. So with regards to hardware profiles, I think it's pretty standard information. Most people would be able to figure out what's in here. The one thing to note, there's no disks. I haven't assigned any disks to this. This is part of just a profile. So I'm not saying that this profile needs to have a 60 gig disk or a 40 gig disk. That's not where it sits. It sits in the virtual machine templates. The templates need to be the ones that are defining what the disks are. What I've got here is just a couple of standard configs where I've said, okay, I need a standard spec server, and that could be for some custom application that goes on where it needs one CPU, dynamic memory enabled, and we're going to just use basic memory. We're going to give them half a gig to start up. Minimum it can run is 16 megabytes. Of course, that's always going to work. And maximum memory of 1 gig. So we're going with a stock standard profile. If you ask me for a standard server, this is what you're getting. We can document this, we can apply it to different types of templates and different types of environments. All these profiles and everything can be exportable, so you can move them across environments if you need to, from a dev environment to a test environment to production, if you have multiple different versions of instances of VMM set up in your environment. So in here I can also pick which networks I want within this environment, and also some other things around making it highly available, and I clicked on the wrong section, highly available within my environment. I've taken that tick off. I've only got one host in my production environment currently. So under a normal scenario, I'd have that ticked so that everything's highly available. But that also points out the fact of it may be a tier 3 server for you guys, or category C server, and you don't want it being highly available. You don't care if the server goes down, it just doesn't handle your pay, so who really cares at the end of the day? Or it might not be a line of business application for your environment, it could just be a standard app. And then of course, the higher spec server, which follows the same fundamentals, I've just given it more resources. While we're also in the profiles, I can select whether this machine should be deployed to Hyper-V. Well, this profile can be used on Hyper-V, Xen Server, or VMware. I can have a combination of the lot if I need to, depending on the cloud that I'm going to as well. It does take a bit of careful planning, but it does work quite well. So the only differences with this is I've given it a couple of procs and I've given it more memory. So moving into guest OS profiles. And if I just... So this is exactly what you'd expect it to be. It's the guest operating system. How am I configuring the operating system that I'm deploying? What am I telling it to do? How do I want my servers identified within my environment? Do I have a standard naming convention for web servers? Do I have a standard naming convention for standard servers or database servers? In my case here, I've gone SRV. That's my standard naming convention for this environment. But I've got hash at the end. What happens with the hash? It's just a custom variable where it will go away and look into Active Directory and look into Virtual Machine Manager and pick the next available number. So the chances of me getting server 02 twice is minimized and removed, unless somebody, of course, deploys it via Hyper-V another way that I can't see and it's not managed by my environment. I can define the local administrator password. I can say no administrator console credentials. I can set my password, or I can say, you know what, I'm going to use a run as account. I'm going to use one of my domain accounts to actually be the administrator on this box and assign and do all the roles under that. I don't necessarily have to use the administrator account anymore. Does anybody use the administrator account for anything in production these days? Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, a bit different there. And of course, my product key with Server 2012 only being launched, I haven't had a product key until now. I can set my time zone, I can set my operating system levels, so it knows what it's deploying. I only want this profile applied to my Windows Server 2012. The reason for that is my roles and features are different. So between 2008 and 2008 R2 and 2012, all the roles and features available to me are different. So my GUI was going to respond to me and give me the roles and features that are related to 2012. It's not going to give me the 2008 features. If I switch the menu option further up to be the operating system of 2008 R2, I will get different options, including if you pick standard, enterprise, or data center editions. Of course, what domain do I want it joining to? And we've got down there, we've got answer files and run once. This is for legacy systems. If it selects it at any point. And literally what it is I can pass Windows 2003 and Windows 2003 R2, I can pass it an unattended file. Those are products that aren't rich in the GUI, for argument's sakes. And what I do is I pass the unattended file, it applies the unattended file during specialization phase. With the run once, I can then start setting all the run once commands that we all used to do for those systems to kick off, whether it be a custom script or anything else that's running. Now, if I go back to the SQL environment, what I've done here is I've got a different naming convention for my SQL environment. But what I'm also doing is saying I've got a different server name. I might use a different edition of Windows, so I can assign different things. And also I've got predefined roles. In this case, I've got none because I'm using a pre-sysprep version of SQL as well. So I've already pre-installed all my prerequisites that I needed across this environment. But it's the same information. What domain am I joining? What roles and features do I want additional over in the top? What SQL deployed? Here we have the predefined compatibility profiles. You can edit those if you need to, can make a copy of them and change them and add additional profiles to your own environment. I haven't come across any need to be able to do that so far. So moving into application profiles, I can now start defining my tiers of my environment. So I've got application tiers, and I've got a standard application that I need across all my environment, or it's a standard application that we deploy quite often, whether you're using a BizTalk solution or anything like that. My web services tier, well, it's just web services. What am I going to do with them? And I'll show you shortly as I dig deeper into them. And then taking SQL profiles that I've created and expanding them further to be further than just SQL, but starting to talk about the databases, the custom scripts that I need to run, the permissions I need against those databases. So in the case of this machine here, my application tier, I'm actually deploying a server app v package. I need that server app v package to be deployed across my application tier. It's looked into the package, it's pulled back a whole bunch of details out of it, and it's given me things like the settings that's there. There's a service that's involved, where that service is a mandatory or encrypted process, and also what context it's running under. I can again change the context to be whatever I need it to be for my environment. But before I can deploy a server app v package, I need the server app v agent installed. I can't just deploy it. Windows won't understand what it is. So what I've said to it is go away, look at the custom resources, as you can see there, which is again related back to the library that we created. Grab that package. I don't know if I deleted and closed it, didn't I? Look within that package and find that file, running it with this executable. Because it's a batch file, I need it to just run in the command window. So it's going to look into the package, find the install sav, and it's going to run the command with the parameters that I've passed it. So again, it's taken that CR resource, pulled it across, and it's running everything that I tell it to run within it. If I have a look at my web services now, because I'm using MS Deploy, it'll catch up. I'm installing MS Deploy prior. There's a prerequisite step. It's going through, it's running the install, it's installing MS Deploy 3.0, and then it's going, all right, cool, what other things do you need me to do? There's another custom resource you've asked me to look at, which is actually an MS Deploy package. I'll look into that package, pull the metadata from it, and run the command line that is required within that package and apply it to your environment. In this case here, it's my web services tier actual websites. So IIS is installed as part of the guest operating system deployment. IIS gets configured the website gets configured via this package after MS Deploy has gone down. So I'm starting to actually get into the point where I'm deploying websites. I'm not just deploying IIS, I'm actually deploying the websites within the environment. I'm deploying applications within my environment that are related to what I need. So we're starting to actually build up the model of actually getting an application as an end-to-end service within your organization. In this case here, now I'm saying, all right, when I select this profile, I'll move that so you can see it, I actually need a database deployed. I've gone and I've created an application package there called Expenses. It's the expense manager application for our environment. So what I've got is a DAC pack, which contains the basic database and its structure. I'm getting that to go away and deploy. So once SQL has gone through and completed its sysprep phase, so the operating system completes its specialization phase, SQL completes its sysprep phase, and then this layer here will apply over the top and apply my database. I've then got a SQL script that will run afterwards that will add my user to the database and start populating additional data that I've done since the creation of that DAC pack. I then sequence the order up and I can say, well, one's post-install, one's pre-install, one does this, one does that, or I've got multiple post-install scripts that need to run. I can keep adding SQL scripts here as I need to. And again, those are pulled resources straight out of the library. Oh, where are we? So it's looking into my library, and I'm just going to add bad table. I can pass any additional parameters through. I can run it as my SA account. I can set encryption of the connection if I need to, if there's sensitive data in that script, and run from there. Of course, the one thing I didn't mention is your library. You need to protect the library. If you're containing any sensitive applications or sensitive data, you need to protect it. So you don't give everyone full control. You give your services that run VMM and that you use to deploy the right permissions they need, and then any other people that you trust to be able to update or maintain that library. You can go for everyone full control if your environment's quite open like that and everybody's quite free with it, but most of the customers we deal with, we have to be quite restrictive on some of the applications we are deploying out of there. There's sensitive data in there. So we do lock down the libraries a bit. As long as the service run as accounts that you're using for VMM can access it, it will deploy them. And I'm going to tell it that I need that to be number 3, and I could add another one in if I wanted to, depending on what order I need the things to be processed. And I'll quickly skip over this one because there's only so much you can see about applications. So again, this one here, I'm deploying the MS Deploy package, but in this case, I'm deploying 2 websites. I've got 2 different packages being deployed, and this is on my front tier, and they're going to deploy 2 completely separate websites with some custom scripts within them that are going to deploy and to create the bindings for me as well. So now we start to bring them all together as a virtual machine. And we start using templating at this point to actually bring all the pieces of the puzzles that we've just built into one template. Now the templates are literally as they stand today, virtual machine templates, bar the fact that we've added applications, some additional scripts that we require, and it's not just an operating system with a few roles and features that we've deployed. So as I roll through the wizard, I get the option to pick from all the different types of templates that I have in my environment. In this case here, I'm just going to use 2012 as a pre-sysprep VHD that I've got here, VHDX, sorry. I'll give it a name. And now we start to be able to access all the building blocks that we've actually created up until this point. So when I look at the configuration, I'm going to say, well, I want this to be a high-spec server. I'm going to apply that configuration to it. It's going to look back through my hardware profiles, pull those profiles back, and start applying the configuration for me. What type of server am I planning on building here? So look at my OS profiles. Well, I'll just go for a web server. So again, it's pulling that information, assigning it to this template, and you see the variables are there, the admin passwords that I've assigned previously are following suit. And being that I've selected a web server, I should probably put my web server roles on there as well. And again, it's been applied. I've just got to double check. What I can do, what I didn't cover off actually, sorry, is I can say OS compatibility. I can pick to what layer I want to what operating systems I want to layer these application profiles down to. The SQL one, you've got to be a little bit tricky because you might have difference in configuration for some of your SQL 2012 and SQL 2008 databases. But in this case here, at the end of the day, I can deploy my websites to whether it be 2008, 2008 R2, or 2012. And I can actually roll through and say, actually, I'm going to support it on all these different iterations here, and 2012. And in that case there, it will deploy to any of them. The hardware profile becomes available for any of those types of operating systems. And if I wanted SQL on this box, I could go away and pick my SQL config as well. And suddenly that information's following right the way through. I'll cancel the creation. One thing to note, as with 99% of things in System Center 2012 and Server 2012, PowerShell. So for each step you go through and each command you run, any wizards that you follow through, you can grab the PowerShell command. Copy and paste it out, throw it into a runbook if you need to, an orchestrator to, of course, changing some of the data to actually add self-service and automation to the process. It's quite powerful the way things happen here. You look at it and you think, my God, it's attaching virtual COM ports, it's attaching networks, it's doing this. It's actually quite a simple process. Once you get the information out, you can change all the other information you need to with things like Orchestrator, looking into your environment, getting the right information, and then automating the entire process for you. Just at the end of the wizard, yep. And you'll find, even when I'm creating application SQL profiles, there's a PowerShell window for that as well. I click on that, it shows me the script. So if I need to delegate the role, I don't want to give console access, I can give it to somebody and say, here's a PowerShell script, change these parameters and run it. I don't necessarily have to give them the access to the console itself. Okay. So I guess why services? I've been rambling on enough about templates and profiles, but why services? Well, services, at the end of the day, are manageable. It's a multi-tiered environment. It doesn't have to be 3 tiers. It can be 1 tier as well. There's no reason why you shouldn't deploy services within your environment, even if they're a single-tier solution. The relationship between your service template that we're going to create shortly and the services you deploy, whether it be a 1-tier solution or a 3-tier solution, are maintained. So if I make changes to the service template, I can apply those now to the different tiers that I've created, the different services or applications within my environment. It allows me to scale out. I can configure scale out properties. I can decide what the attributes are around scale out. I can then apply automation in the background to allow for the scale out or do it manually. Scale down is a bit more tricky, but it does work. I can turn around and say, within this service template, I have 3 tiers. When I do scale, I only want to scale 1 tier, my front-end tier, because it's getting hammered because there's an event that we've got on and everybody's registering. Or I need, my middle tier needs to allow for more scale. I need to be able to service one tier while the other one's available. I need to keep hosting. So what you can do is, even though you've got maybe a single mid-tier, you can scale out that tier, service the one that's currently in your production environment while you're still hosting transactions. Then tear down the tier that you pulled up on a temporary basis. Change control pending. It also allows for administrators to manage fewer operating systems. So it's not about, okay, I've got a VHD, I'm deploying that. It's actually one common environment that gets deployed across. The whole differencing disk can be applied to it as well. And you can end up with a master gold image that's with a bunch of differencing disks. That's going to depend on the architecture for your environment. So when we're creating the service templates, the typical information that you don't see while you're building all your other profiles and templates is your networks. You see them in your hardware profiles, but you don't see network load balancers. Those are based on the service that you're applying. There's not many people that I know that will deploy a network load balancer to every single part of their environment, and it's the same config every single time. If it is, it's pretty impressive. So it's part of the deployment. We get to make some customization changes when we are creating these templates to say, well, I have this base template, but I want to make tweaks to it. I need to modify a few things as I'm going, and we'll see it as we're going through. Service templates define the different types of tiers, the logic, the hardware, your operating system, your applications. So you've actually got a single entity that you're managing for a number of different areas across your organization. And as I said before, the services are always linked back to their original deployment point. So if I've got a version 1 of a service template and I deploy a version 1.1, I can't delete 1.0 until everybody's been upgraded to another version, because they are maintained. The relationship is always maintained. As I said, we can tweak them as we need to just before we deploy. So service templates are created by using a Visio-style designer. I can drag and drop tiers. I can go add connections. I can talk about the networks. I can add and remove applications as I need to. So this is just a simple 2-tier application. It's got a web front end and the expense manager's SAV package running in the background. So you can see they've both got separate networks. They're connecting to their own LANs, but they connect to the same logical network at the end of the day. So using the wizard, we start, again, see this says view script down there. You can pull the PowerShell script for this step of the process. Some of those System Center 2012 tools actually allow you to grab step-by-step PowerShell commands. So I'm just going to create a simple 2-tier application as a service template. I should have given the version number. So as you see, I've got a service template called demo. At the end of the day, that is my service. This could be your internal business name for a solution or for an application that you guys use. And then it's got a first tier and a second tier. Notice that they're blank. There's nothing there. If I come across to the side here, I can see that I've got my web server template, I've got my SQL template, and these are the virtual machine templates that have been created. This is where we're taking virtual machines from the point where we are yesterday to the next layer. We're actually dragging them in and making them manageable and actually associated with each other. So I'm just going to drag a web server across. Suddenly it's gone, okay, here's the stuff that you've got in my template. You've got my networks, you've got my applications that I'm deploying, I've got my name. I should move that down. This is one of the little bugs that appears as everything sits on top of each other quite often. Yeah. And then I want an application tier. I drag that across. And I can save and validate that information. And what it's going to do is go away and look at the types of information that are in those templates, the types of information that I've got on my service template itself, and make sure they're all valid. And I can actually look at deploying this within my organization or within my clouds. What I can do now is select the tiers. And within here, I've got, this tier can be scaled out. What's my minimum default instance? So if I say 1, it will deploy 1 server. If I say 2, while I'm deploying a service template, it will actually deploy 2 servers within my environment with all the applications that I've defined in that tier. I can say, here's the maximum number that I can scale out to. So if it's a busy time, I can scale right out to 5 servers or 10 servers. But the minimum instance that I can have, and now the minimum instance has 2 roles. If somebody's sitting there going, delete, 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 or if I'm sitting there going, well, I'm servicing my environment, I'm going to patch it, or I'm going to do some other things via SCVMM, and it will always leave that minimum number available to handle transactions within the environment. So in this case here, I'm just going to go default instance 2, and I want minimum of 1 servers up. You see by default, you've got everything can be scaled out. Microsoft select that by default. In the case here, I might want to change it or tweak it if I need to. Then it's about configuring my deployment. It's going to say to me, okay, what are you going to call it? What is this? Do you want to give it a business application name, or do you want to just give it a tier name? So in this case here, I'll just call it demo deployment. I get to pick from all the available clouds within my environment or hosts, deploy to clouds. So deploying within, if I had a development and a test environment, I could pick those and deploy to those if they were all managed under the same CVMM instance. What happens now is it takes me into the services where it's looking at how it's going to place it. Where is it going to place it? What underlying hosts are going to accept the roles? Can all those hosts see the networks? Can they see the library? Can they see everything else that they need to provide this service back to the organization? And you start to see now it's associated with the cloud at the top layer, then my service template, then the multiple tiers, and what's within those tiers. It's saying, you told me you need 2 default instances, here's the 2 default servers. You're going to get those straight out of the box. And I can hit deploy and it'll deploy the services. I won't in this case, because I'm running out of time, so I'm going to have to scurry through a bit. One of the other cool things about service templates and deploying services within a cloud is that you can start to upgrade them. I can create another version of the service template, tweak it as I need to. I can increase the memory, CPUs, you've got to be careful a bit there. I can change the DAC pack if I need to. By doing that, I can say, all right, drop this database, but apply this database. Of course, you've got to be bloody careful with databases, because if you've got data in them, you're going to lose it. It scrubs them. Or I can run a couple of SQL scripts to add additional tables or fields to my environment, or fix an issue within the database. I can update my websites. So if I'm using the MS Deploy kits, go away and update the actual websites. I can then start looking at downgrading services as well. That, again, be careful. If you've got an application that is reliant on a certain type of database and you change that application layer, you're going to get issues in the back end. So in the case of my current cloud here, I have a number of web servers and I've got an application tier. When you're looking at services within your private cloud environment, it actually drills down to the applications as well. So it won't show me the fact that it's deployed in MS Deploy or the SAV agent, but it will show me that I have a web deploy package that's been deployed to my environment. It will also show me that there's a SAV application that's running within my environment as well. So I know they have been deployed. If it failed or there was an issue, it would tell me critical, failed, and so on. So in this case here, if I have a look across the top, I'm running the Expense Manager service template, and it's version 1.1. This is current. That's my most up-to-date version. what I want to do is I've realized that my web services tier, for example, I haven't assigned enough memory to it. So those boxes are running out of memory rather than actually running out of any other type of data to be able to service requests. So using the designer again, I've created another copy of the service template. Now that's maintaining a relationship back to the previous version in itself. And I just need to go through and change the version number. Oh. And come and have a look at my tier itself. All right, we've got the tiers that I need there, but I also want to change the memory for it. So this is where I'm starting now to be able to actually customize over and above the hardware profiles and the application profiles. I can start to delve a bit deeper into the service templates themselves and actually make the tweaks that are required for my environment or solution. The catch here is that you can change the upper memory limit. Server 2012 and Hyper-V can handle an upper memory limit change, not a lower memory limit. What is it, 8? Who cares? Go with whatever. So I've made the change to the memory, I've saved and validated it. Rather than configuring a deployment which will create a new service within my private cloud, it's a matter of just closing that and publishing this as available. I can revoke the service template if I need to as well, as long as it hasn't been assigned to any of the deployments in the environment. So if I come back to my services, that still says current because it's going to take a bit of time to poll it, but I can set the service template level that I want to use. I want to use 1.1. That, unfortunately, is a pre-Service Pack 1 bug. It's meant to list my changes. If you notice here, it's going to looks at all the services and all the tiers and says, by the way, if you're going to do any changes to all these tiers, this service has only got one mid-tier. It's going to reboot. You're going to lose operational activity. So it's just a bit of a heads up while it's looking through everything. It goes through now, it looks at the service template, enumerates all the differences that it needs to, and starts to go through and say, okay, I need to apply this now to these machines. The point here to note is you've got to be careful on what you're changing and what your operating system can support you changing on the fly. So 2008 R2 doesn't handle memory that well. It reboots the servers for the memory change. 2012 can handle it on the fly. So you do have to pay a bit of special attention as to what you are changing so that you don't just end up rebooting your entire services within your environment. Deploy it. Okay. And then, of course, apply. Yeah. So what's happening now is it's go away and servicing my service within the environment. And the key thing there is I haven't had to touch every single box. I've touched the originating point that I use to deploy to my environment. So it's a central point that I'm managing. It's that whole centralized management, simplified administration. And that's going to tick away for a while now while it's making all the changes. So I'll leave it for now, unless it finishes. Oh, there we go, finished. So it's given me an error, completed with info. That information is telling me, hey, by the way, you took the chances here of actually applying changes when you use one server in one of your tiers. So now I can actually go back to my library and delete that service template if I need to, because I am now to the most current version. Again, you can downgrade them as well. I can revoke the template, remove it off this machine, it will take it back to its previous state. Of course, there's a bunch of caveats. You might have to change the service template order to have a whole bunch of uninstall or removal scripts. So hopefully that gives you guys a bit more insight into Building service templates, taking it beyond just virtualization of servers, actually looking into applications being deployed within your environment and also managing them going forward. Server 2012 and System Center 2012 really do bring together a number of features. There is a bit of a delay at the moment with Service Pack 1 for Server 2012, but the beta products are out and you can do 99% of things right now with testing environments and service templates as well for 2012. So the related exam for this area is 70-247. You can do the 246, I think is the next one, which is monitoring and operating. There is some virtual machine manager content in there, but 90% of your virtual machine manager content is in configure and deploy. It's about getting your underlying infrastructure right, your service profiles right, and then your service templates right. You can contact me on my Intergen account if you need to, or Twitter. By the way, I don't tweet. So if you want to tweet, go for it. But I prefer email. Thanks for your time, and I'm glad to see everybody's still awake. Don't forget to do your eval forms, there's Xboxes and stuff.